there are many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly, looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle, a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
We have been able to pull our people into the whole economic process. And our people have gladly been pulled into the economic process because our people see the benefits which the revolution has brought for them. They understand that when 37 cents out of every dollar is spent on health and education, that means something. In this country, the figure is probably nearer to 10 cents on every dollar. Because today in Grenada, the money that the people of Grenada used to have to spend, for example, when they went to a doctor or a dentist, that money they no longer have to spend because they now have free health care throughout the system. Others, how do we evaluate other sides of the report? Like when they say that Grenada violates human rights. When they say to us, how come you have detainees? What about the press? What about elections? When they say to us, where are your elections? They don't turn around at the same time and say to their friends in South Africa, where are your elections? When they say to us that elections must be held, and if you don't have elections, then you can't expect support. And unless you have elections, then we can't give you the normal treatment. We say, Salvador Allende of Chile. Salvador Allende of Chile was elected in September 1970 by the people of Chile. Allende did not take power through a revolution. Allende did not form a militia. Allende did not grab any land or property. Allende had no political detainees. Allende did not crush the press. He did not close down the parliament. He did not suspend the Constitution. He played by every rule they wrote, but they killed him still. These people understand very well that a revolution means a new situation. Revolution means that the abuses and excesses of the violent, reactionary, and disruptive minority has to be crushed so that the majority interests can prevail. When the Americans had their revolution in 1776, it took them 13 years to call their election. They talk about detainees, but when the American Revolution came in 1776, 600,000 people were detained in this country. 100,000 Americans in the first week of the American Revolution. 100,000 fled to Canada. Thousands were locked up without charge or trial. Hundreds were shot. And the counter-revolutionaries after the American Revolution, they had no right to vote. They had no right to teach. They had no right to preach. They had no right to a job. Their land was confiscated without payment. So when the falsifiers of history try to pretend that the American Revolution was a Boston Tea Party, was a very bloody Tea Party.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Recharge Colonialism, the organization's page. I want to talk about an issue as far as elections and democracy. So, repeatedly this year, what we've seen time after time after time again is elections that are very questionable inside of particularly the African continent and the Caribbean. But also, if you want to look at the United States election, I mean, how is it, again, that Africans are consistently being taken advantage of by parties like the Democratic Party that have no affiliation to, or no intention, rather, to service their people who are actually their constituents? This is all things that exist inside of democracy. So what I want to do in this video is break down what I will call the democracy coin game. Now, what is the democracy coin game? Following decolonization, whenever Africa was previously colonized by the different European powers, there had to be some type of way to institute an assurance that those Europeans would maintain power inside of the colonies, former colonies, despite the fact that they were not the official power. Now, it's interesting that these powers all mandated, and it's still basically like a mandate that you have to have a democracy. This is not to say that democracy, true democracy, is not something that is good for all people, because true democracy is not just democracy as far as voting every 4 years. True democracy is when the government literally represents the people, meaning that homeless person down there who can't get a job and lives on the street, you represent that person and you're fighting for them. Or that person who is locked up and they have a long rap sheet and all that stuff, you represent that person. That's true democracy. But what we see today, I tell you, I don't believe that you can have one government actually claim democracy. And particularly in those in the African continent, because at least those in the European continent can say that they're being democratic in the sense that they're representing the white overclass or the white interest of their populations, which are majority white. But they're not obviously representing the interest of the Africans in their countries. So as far as those in the African continent, let's talk about them. What we have had this year, Mali, a country of people all rose up. They rose up against their government and they said, we no longer want to be represented by you. And because they did not want to be represented by them, they basically took their president. They said, look, you need to step down. He stepped down. What you seen quickly was a number of African leaders rising up together and saying, you cannot do this. You cannot unseat your president. So let's pause right there. The mass of the people said, you do not represent us. Okay. Again, democracy is representative. But they are saying that you cannot represent us, and they're saying you have to leave. And the response is that you can't do that. So you can't do democracy then, because if you can't be represented by the person who's supposed to represent you, you can't do democracy. Now let's go forward. The response by all of them is that you can't do that. You can't unseat your president. Okay, we see the flaw in that logic. But then once it became clear that the president was not going to be put back into power, the next argument became, well, you need to have elections. Well, how is it that they need to have elections where they haven't even had a chance to formulate, well, what went wrong? No, you need to have elections. You need to go by your constitution. Okay, well, who gave me that constitution? Oh, those constitutions were written by the European powers that colonized us. Oh, I see. So you're more interested in ensuring that we comply with the mandates of colonialism, ensuring that we uphold the system that was given to us, not the one that actually represents our people. That's the con game of democracy. Consistently, you will see a push, not just by obviously other African countries, but by Western countries that are going to try to tell you that if your government does not have elections every 4 years, despite the fact that the government might completely represent you as far as giving you healthcare, giving you childcare, allowing you to go to school for free, despite the fact that you might be completely happy in that country. You are essentially not in a democratic country. That's backwards logic. And that's the type of logic that has allowed so many of our people, if not all of our people, to be completely deceived by this system and continue to be deceived by the system. Look at Africans in the United States. The United States is supposed to be so democratic. It's a democratic place, right? They have elections. You hardly hear about election fraud and all that, okay? Africans in the United States consistently have put the government ahead of themselves, have put the Democratic Party and previously the Republican Party against their own personal interests. Now, despite that government does not represent them, has not done anything to undo what that government has done to them. Again, that same government has been either complicit or conspiring to ensure that those people, our people, remain inside of a subjugated position. How can I say I live in a democracy when my government is not being representative of me? Understand the contradiction. Now, also understand how is it that this idea of four-year elections, or two-year elections, whatever they say, how that works for your oppressors, good. Let's say you have a revolution of the people. Let's say the people say, no, we want this. We want a type of government that's going to represent us truly. Well, guess what? Every 4 years, the government's patient. We'll let you have your way for right now. But when that 4 years is up, we're going to make sure we get our guy in there. We're going to pull strings. In fact, you better hope that we're not going to start working on that now and that we're not going to get impatient. Otherwise, we're going to possibly do a coup. That's what happens consistently. And that's the benefit of having those elections consistently, is that it really benefits the power structure that is trying to manipulate your political processes. Now, let me say, I'm not saying this to say that, hey, don't have elections. That's not the point of the video. The point of the video really is to say is that consistently this year and every year, honestly, we keep hearing things about elections being manipulated all over the world with African people. The question has to be asked. Number one, how is it that our constitutions that are supposed to be instruments that, again, the people consent to the Constitution, how is it that the Constitution is allowing corruption? If your Constitution is allowing corruption, is the Constitution representative? No, it's not a representative document. The other question has to be, though, for us who are on a grassroots, for us who are revolutionaries, who are fighting for the system that does represent our people, is before we get into these fights to dethrone our president or to push our president out, are we ready to go through the growing pains that come after getting that person out? And I'm finding more and more that our people are not being prepared. You have to, number one, before you even get that president out of power, you have to have an understanding what went wrong with your constitution, what's the new constitution going to be, what's it going to look like, and what type of transition are we going to need? How are we going to prevent outside influence from derailing the process? These are all things you have to have thought out, because if you do not have that thought out, what's going to happen is you might have that coup, you might successfully have an uprising, and hey, you might even have a lot of civilian rule inside of that situation. But guess what? Those people around are going to say, well, no, we're going to have a blockade, or we're going to close the borders. The ECOWAS all basically told Mali, no, we're not going to recognize you. We're going to close your borders. We're not going to do any business dealings with you. Are you ready for that smoke for your revolutionary beliefs? And if you're not, then you better have some allies before you get into that situation. But then even beside the fact that they're all going to conspire against you, do you have ready to go, you as the people? Are you ready to institute something that represents you, your interest, and what you want things to look like? If you're not ready for that, then I suggest, as someone who's not in a position to be on the ground at this point, but I do suggest that we take more time to really figure out what went wrong with the governments that we have, what we want a government to look like, and how do we construct that? How do we ensure that that is going to be something that exists for our people? Africans in the United States, in the UK, in different places where we are the minority, where we do not have obviously the same presence, where we can say, hey, you have to completely go our way because we're the dominant population. We have to figure out what does liberation look like for us inside of a white supremacist system. Can liberation exist instead of a white supremacist system? Degrees of liberation can exist. Self-governance can exist. But overall, can that exist? That's something for us to figure out. But what we can't do is keep going with the same old, and not questioning what went wrong this time. What went wrong in this election? How is it that this election didn't affect any change for my people? How is it that my people are still dying? My people are still bleeding. My people are still exploited. How is it that these things are happening? If we're not ready to ask these tough questions, then I say that we're not ready, not just ask the questions, face the questions and plan accordingly, that we're really not ready to be inside of a different situation than we've been in. So I hope I've explained what I will call the democracy con game. I love to see your guys' comments. And if you want to learn more about WCC, We Charge Colonialism, you can go to our website, wechargecolonialism.org, to learn more about us. I hope to see you guys in the next video.
Hey guys, this is Deja with We Charge Colonialism, also known as WCC. And today I wanted to give you guys some information about the Justice Bank Initiative. Now, first things first, Black people, you are being hunted in America. And to back that claim, I do have a couple of facts. A Black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person. 65% of Black adults have felt targeted due to their race. 5% of illicit drug users are African American, yet African Americans represent 29% of those arrested and 33% of those incarcerated for drug offenses. Despite making up close to 5% of the global population, the US has nearly 25% of the world's prison population. African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. Black people, we are being hunted in America. And here are some more facts. In 2014, African Americans constituted 2.3 million, or 34% of the total 6.8 million correctional population. The imprisonment rate of African American women is 2 times that of white women. Nationwide, African American children represent 32% of children who are arrested, 42% of children who are detained, and 52% of children whose cases are judicially waived to criminal courts. And African American children, they only represent 14% of the population. Black people, we are being hunted. Now, how do we fight back? Well, at We Charge Colonialism, our first project is known as the Justice Bank Initiative, or you can call it the JBI. Now, what is the Justice Bank Initiative? The Justice Bank Initiative is a mutual aid group under the supervision of We Charge Colonialism. Any person of African descent can become a member, and if you are a paying member for 3 months and become a victim to the racist criminal injustice system, you may be eligible for funds towards your bail or legal fees. Also, how does it work? Well, we are democratic. We're democratic in our policies, rules, and oversight of the JBI is carried out by all of its members equally. You pay a monthly fee of $10 to the JBI. After 3 months, you are considered eligible for assistance for any bail or legal fees incurred after the 3-month period. Any nonviolent charge is eligible for up to 1/3 of the JBI funds, and violent charges are decided on a case-by-case basis and voted on by members. Now, if you're interested in joining, you can email us at justicebankinitiative@gmail.com. And if you are simply interested in supporting, considering donating to our GoFundMe, or buying a t-shirt or hoodie on our Teespring at the links down below, all donations will go towards the JBI. Now, we hope you will join in this effort as we organize to fight a racist injustice system. And by the way, here are the shirts. They're pretty cool. You have Huey P. Newton, Assata Shakur, Mumia Abu Jamal, and Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you really do join the JBI. Better yet, join us at We Charge Colonialism. We're all in this together.